let's start right here. Your name and your relationship to the film.
My name is Rodney Stone, but I'm professionally known as Rodney C. One half of the original Double Trouble, featured in the first hip-hop, breakdance, and graffiti movie ever created, and it was called Wild Style.
Okay.
Considered the Bible of rap, opened the doors for all the movies and things going on today. In addition to that, I'm 1/5 member of the Funky Four, plus one more, and the Funky Four plus one. We were the very first hip-hop group from the Bronx to get a legitimate record deal. We were the very first hip-hop group with a female. Her name is Shot Rock. She is the first female of hip-hop. And we were the very first hip-hop group to do national television. We did Saturday Night Live with Deborah Harry on Valentine's Day, 1981.
Nice.
And I want to shout out my legendary brother, Tony Crush, Tony Tone from the Cold Crush Brothers in the building.
Y'all can give that brother a little more than that. This is one of the true pioneers of authentic hip-hop.
My name is Benton Jeter, and I am the director of Music Lovers. I just want to give just real brief on this. I'd had a speech that was, but I'm not going to even get into it. I'm just going to speak from the heart. I was inspired to do this film. I can honestly say the Most High inspired me to want to bring forth teaching these kids. We have a generation of entertainers. Everybody want to entertain, but we don't have any teachers. We don't have any teachers that's teaching these kids anything, and it's ridiculous. Even if you look into the police killing and brutality last year, especially, and you have this angry group of just black youth. They don't know anything about their history. They don't know who they are. They can't name a civil rights leader beyond Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And you fighting against this monster, that's the master killer. So that's where the inspiration came to do this film. And I want to use this film as a teaching tool. I don't want really the praise or the pat on the back, because I just feel like I'm doing something that's needed right now. It's a need, it's not a want. And I'm gonna let you speak to my co-director, Mr. Jazzy Moto.
Eric Jazzy Moto Williams on Facebook, DJ Jazzy Moto professionally. Been in hip hop since 1978, as I said in my interview. And basically, I ended up becoming the co-director of the film because Mr. Jeter here, we met through Facebook and we talked. And he talked to a few people actually before he spoke to me. But I was the only one that understood what his concept was. So he granted me the co-director title. I didn't even ask for it. He gave it to me.
Now, let's jump right into the film. You have a lot of footage. You have a lot of legends, a lot of iconic hip hop artists in the film. The time period. How long did it take to put the film together, and how hard was it getting all the interviews that you got? Because I know it was pretty hard.
Well, the film actually started even before I even knew it. If you look at the last clip and you see me actually doing the Public Any Party, that happened first. And that was the kind of the crazy part, because when it got to the end of the film, I was like, well, how can I say what I needed to say? And it was already said a year before the inspiration came to do the film. So it was funny how it just fell in order. It's almost like what I did is I traced my hip hop roots as a DJ and being a b-boy all the way back to first generation hip hop with Rodney, and they're actually in my family lineage. So I started in October 2011, and I just got it completed last year. It was July 18, 2016.
Okay. And this question is for the whole panel. At what point, what era or what year you guys would say hip hop really started to shift and disconnect from its roots?
to give it an actual, well, close to factual year, I'd say roughly about 2003. At that point, more of the, not putting it on a geographical geographical area, but more or less when the Southern hip hop came in and started to kind of permeate the market, more of the negative images started being fed to the youth, where there began to be an agenda within the industry of any type of positive artist, it was systematically shutting their careers down. So it's from that point that things just got, as the years progressed, 2006, the negativity got a little higher. 2010, it got a little higher. And by the time we got to 2012 to 2015 was when it hit its all-time highest of everything you hear is nothing but negative. You're in the trap, selling drugs, and the thing to me that was the most comical, you have everybody talking about all these drugs that they're selling, getting from over the border and bringing it into the country, and they sending all over their area and all of this here. You still live in your mama house, homie. When you selling drugs, the era I come from in the 80s, when pretty much anybody who's seen the movie Paid in Full, those are the brothers I came up around in Harlem.
Yeah.
In that era, when you was getting money like that, it showed. I know for a personal fact, Richard Porter was practically a millionaire before he was 19.
Wow.
Millionaire. Not thousandaire, millionaire. Him and AZ both. Alpo in there somewhere. I didn't know Alpo personally, so I don't really know. But if you're getting that kind of money, it's gonna show. So if you in 2010 talk about you flipping all these keys and you moving this weight here and you're moving that there, but you still live in a shack in a rural part of the South, who's telling the story here? It's like there's no truth to it. But the industry is literally feeding this to these kids, whereas now the New York market has lost itself because now New York is trying to imitate the South. Which, to me personally, it doesn't make sense. This is the mecca of hip hop. This is where it all started. So why should we now, not saying that we got the rights to be running it, but why should the artists in New York chase something that they don't live?
Can I?
Step in, right, and tell them.
I agree with what you say, right? But in actuality, the disconnect actually started when it became commercialized. Once hip-hop hit wax in '79, it took on a whole brand new dynamic at that point. We got away from the culture which we lived and what we, and as we know what a culture is, it's a lifestyle. And it's not what we do, but it's what we live. And we who actually live it have never gotten away from it. But Nas made a record and he said hip hop was dead, right? And there are people who agree with it and people who disagree with it. But I agree with it because what he was talking about was the original era from '73 to '78. Now, if you wasn't living hip hop, '73 to '78, you don't know nothing about hip hop. What you do know is the culture that derived from that era. And once it hit wax, it took on a whole new dynamic. You know what I mean? And it became commercialized. So at that point is when the disconnect started. Has nothing to do with, what's going on now, because what's going on now is the natural evolution of hip hop. Because it couldn't stay the same. So eventually it changes. And you could add 5 years to each generation. Hip hop is 40 plus years old now. So if it's 40 plus years old and we're adding 5 years as the barometer, we got 8+ years or 8 generations of hip hop. And it changes in each generation. It changes. And it's natural, you know? To talk about what's going on, I mean, we could say, oh, we don't like what's going on today because the kids are negative and everything that we're hearing is negative, right? But that's a perception that they live, right? Now, we didn't live that, even though hip-hop was born in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, at a time when the Bronx was burnt down. You know what I mean? As you've seen in the film, right? So if you've seen desolation in the Bronx, it was a cry for us to be heard. And you heard our voice. The whole world heard our voice. And you see it today. Everybody is doing it. Everybody and their mama got around. I bet you I could pick out anybody in here. You wrote around at one point in your life, whether you say it or not, you wrote one because it's natural. It's a part of us. It's what we do. But the disconnect came once it became commercialized and they changed the name of what we do from hip-hop to rap. And people believe hip-hop and rap is the same thing. Rapping is just one element of our lifestyle, of our culture. It is not the whole culture. But if you don't live it, that's what you believe, because the media makes you believe that we rap and that's what we do. I thought rapping was, when I was a younger person, my mother would take me to Macy's and I would watch people wrap packages. That was rapping to me, right? Sylvia Robinson, God bless the dead, who I worked for, she coined the phrase rapping. She named the second rap record, Rapper's Delight. That's where you get rapping from. So everybody who comes after 79 calls themselves rappers. We never called ourselves rappers. We called ourselves what?
MCs.
We called ourselves MCs. And why were we MCs? Because it meant mic control or master of ceremony. So, like I got the mic now, everybody's listening to me because I'm on the mic, right? But everybody can talk. And if you start speaking right now, you still not gonna hear y'all unless you yelling more than you hear me, because I got mic control right now. And that's what we called ourselves, MCs. And if you see early flyers, you will never see the word rapper. Not at all. You will see MC Rodney C, MC Jazzy Jeff, MC Grandmaster Caz, MC, you know, Shy Rock, MC whoever. We've never seen rapper. And once we became rappers, according to the industry, everything changed. And that's when your disconnect came in. Thank you.
Very true. Corporate America changed it all.
How can I follow that? Other than one thing I can say is that hip-hop is passion, and passion comes from God. And that's the reason why everybody's in this room, because you're passionate about hip-hop. That's all I have to say.
Definitely. I want to ask one more question, and then we'll open up the floor for questions from the audience. We know hip-hop is a billion-dollar business. Multi-billion dollar business. But then commercialism kind of killed hip-hop, right? But how do you think an MC or someone that wants to get into the hip-hop business, how can you sustain a viable career without turning to commercialism, or a lot of the platforms that are built on hip hop that are commercial, like movies and a lot of TV shows, which are commercial products. But if things don't go commercial or commercialism isn't a part of hip hop, how do we sustain, or how do we continue to grow and evolve as a business?
Okay, go ahead.
Just tell me what you think about that.
Well, I see that poses a big problem for upcoming artists, and I think because of the internet, I think the internet is the way to do that, to get your voice out or to get your message out. And you have to realize that's global, so you're touching people all over the world. You look at other countries like Japan, and I've actually sent the movie to Japan, it's in England. So it's other people outside of the country that still look at hip hop from the origin standpoint. So that's the only way that I could really see that you being successful other than you know, just pretty much going with the flow.
Well, and to further elaborate on what he was saying, it's like, it also comes from the fact that if you're passionate about what you do artistically, the first key is you have to believe in yourself. Because one thing about the industry, Rodney can verify this from being in the industry professionally, they will tell you who you are, and after a while, you'll start to believe it. So you start to second guess yourself, like, is this what I should be doing? Is this how I'm supposed to be acting? Is this how I'm supposed to be dressing? The one thing to sustain in any career that you're doing as an artist, you have to believe in yourself. And you have to believe in the material that you're doing. And as Brother Jeter said, the internet is now the key to kind of bypassing all the red tape that the industry used to hand us. Because it used to be able to reach other countries around the world, you had to go through their system of foreign policy and foreign networking through their labels. Whereas now, I mean, I'm living proof. I have a fan base in Germany as a DJ, and I've never been there. The internet gives us now the power to be able to sustain ourselves, but the trick to independence is you have to stick with it. The money's never gonna come easy, but if you stick with it and keep pushing and staying true to yourself, you'll get there. It won't happen overnight. That's just the reality of it. You just have to keep pushing.
Y'all can clap. Okay, for me being in this industry close to 40 years, I've learned a lot of things. What I have learned is the lifespan of a song is 3 months. And the lifespan of an artist is 3 years, right? Hip hop is the only genre of music that doesn't support itself.
Amen.
And what I mean by that is people who help to give birth to this genre of music are not being acknowledged, don't get any acclimates, right? Don't do well in the business because their time has passed, right?
Talk about it.
Now, when you say old school, everybody in here can picture somebody from their past that they consider old school, right? But whoever it is that you think it is probably middle school. Because they're not old school, but they're old school to you, right? And what we don't do is we don't learn the history of hip hop. Who gave birth to it? Who's the father of hip hop? Hip hop actually has a birthday now. Do you know hip hop's birthday? Anybody in the room, except for Tony.
Tony, you're excluded from all these
Anybody in the room? What's hip hop?
We know you know.
No, you raise your hand, brother. The who? No, I didn't ask you who was the father. I want to know what's the birthday. You know the birthday?
I know the month. Is it August 1970?
It is August. It's not 1970. But
73.
August 19th, 1960.
it's not August 19th either. He's right
You're
with
close.
He's right with 1973.
1973.
What is it? August 11th, August 12th, 1973. And if it's 100 people in here, it ain't but 3 of us who actually know the birthday.
Why is that?
Because you're not doing your history.
Why is that?
Now,
Because it's there. I don't know why you don't search where hip hop started, who's the father, who gave birth to it. I don't know why you don't do your homework, but I know, right? Because I was there. And what I'm saying is, that's why there's such so much misinformation.
misinformation, yeah.
Because If I said, who's old school to you? Who are you gonna tell me is old school?
Big Daddy Kane.
Big Daddy Kane. Big Daddy Kane is not old school,
No
but he is
No way.
to you. Right? Somebody else. Who's old school to you? Treacherous 3. Now they would be closer to the origins in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? But you didn't say Treacherous 3, because that's not your era. You get what I'm saying? So somebody in here, 20. Anybody in here 20?
25.
25. Okay. Who's old school to you?
To me,
Not me, to you. Who's old school? To you.
Biz Markie.
Biz Markie. You get what I'm saying? Now, Biz Markie is almost 10 years after the birth of hip hop,
That's right.
right? So we don't understand the terminology and we use it loosely. Like there was a terminology where we used pioneer, right? Pioneer. There's a whole bunch of people who claim to be pioneers. But if you do Webster's definition of pioneer is somebody who set a trend. You can't have a bunch of people set a trend. You can only have one person set a trend, but you could have people who follow that trend, right? Am I right or am I wrong?
Yes.
Okay, so, but we use this term loosely to identify that beginning era as pioneers. Now we're not pioneers anymore, we're legends. Tony, don't they call you a legend? No, you're not. No, you're not. You're a legend, right? Don't they call you a legend? There you go. Because what they want to do is they have to identify where it comes from. Everybody's not a legend. Big Daddy Kane is not a legend. He's an icon, right? Why? Because he did well in the record business, right? Which means, right, that he didn't have anything to do with the beginning or the birth of hip hop. What he did was he saw it, he fell in love, he got a record deal, he did well in the music business. So you guys made him an icon because you supported him. But you don't support the people who actually gave birth to him because you don't know who they are.
Now let me elaborate on that with a question for the audience here. If recorded hip hop as an industry didn't start until 79 and after, what would you call hip hop from 73 to 78? Now somebody said, and I think I know who it was because I did recognize the voice, I ain't gonna blow you up, but saying that Biz Markie's old school. I had a 19th birthday party at the YMCA in Harlem on 135th Street. Guess who was the entertainer for the night at my 19th birthday party? Biz Markie.
Sound like Biz Markie.
So, even though you know an artist from the record industry, does not necessarily mean that's where they began. Dougie Fresh, before he became known through the industry as Doug E. Fresh, he was Doug Fresh when he was just in the street, running around coming to parties that me and my partner Wayne G used to throw, beatboxing, MCing. So a lot of these artists you hear from the industry didn't start with the industry. They had a beginning that preceded the industry. That's all history that can be researched. The internet is there to find anything you really want to know. But if you truly love the culture of hip hop and not just rap music, do the research. It's all there. Also, as Rodney said about the birth date of hip hop, the reason that's the birth date, would you please explain that to them, Rodney?
Okay, there's a gentleman, goes by the name of Clive Campbell, who we call DJ
Cool Work.
That's right.
Right? And the Herculoids. He gave a party for his sister. She was going back to college, and he gave a party. And because we identify him as the father of hip hop, he picked that party to be the beginning, because there were parties way before that, right? But he picked that party so that hip hop could have a starting point. And most people don't know that, right? Do you guys know that there's a boulevard in the Bronx called Hip Hop Boulevard now?
That's right.
Right? On Cedric Avenue, on the same block that he gave the party, and the building that he gave that party is now a landmark.
It's considered a
Right?
New York landmark
Which means
now.
that building could never be torn down. So if they tear down everything else on that block, that building will stand forever, because that is the birthplace of the first hip hop party, when we already know that there were parties before that. But it has a birthday, it has a birthplace, and it's in the Bronx.
Wow. Guys, I want to I want to wrap up like this. I want you guys to tell me what's next for the film, where people could see it, find it at, what's next for it, and tell us what's next for you guys, and tell the audience where they could reach you at, websites, social media.
The next step to this, and I pose this because we are in New York, we're in the birthplace of hip hop. I ask that each one of you today tell someone about this film, because this film is not about me. It's about the future of our kids, not just in hip hop, but our kids in just a generation at whole. God gave me this message to bring to you, and this is going back to what you asked me earlier. I didn't really get to answer that question. I actually slept in a closet in Chinatown. You know, Chinatown is my hometown in New York, so if you go down to Hester Street, I slept in one of the little closets in Chinatown to put this film. I used my own money to bring forth this message that the Most High wanted me to deliver, and I have to have Jazzy tell the story, the train story, because if I don't, he's going to kill me. But this will show you how amazing and how this film is beyond me. It's bigger than me. So I just want Jazzy to elaborate, and then I will finish up on that. Just please elaborate on it.
Okay, basically, this was the day that I got convinced personally that God had his hand all over this project. This is what happened. At this point, this was your second or third trip to New York while we were still in the midst of filming. And I took him up to a spot not too far from here on 124th or 123rd and Morningside. No, Manhattan Avenue. That's right at the start of Manhattan Avenue. Called Perks. Used to be a like after work thing back in a couple of years back. Mel Star was one of the featured DJs, so when he came up, I took him over there so that we could give Mel Star his copy of this very shirt that Mr. Jeter's wearing now. These. And we were there, saw a few hip-hop luminaries, Silver Fox from Fantasy 3, Pow Wow from Soul Sonic Force, Rayvon, Johnny Wild, a few known heads from that early era of hip-hop. And we were there just kind of hanging out, and we got hungry. Went over to Popeyes. Now, don't forget I mentioned Popeyes. Went over to Popeyes, got some chicken, sat there, ate, walked back over to Perks. We stayed at Perks maybe another 10, 15 minutes, and he had to catch an early flight, so I had said to him, we need to get back to Brooklyn because you gotta leave early tomorrow. So, we head back to 125th Street to get on the air. Unbeknownst to either one of us, a person who will become directly involved with the filming and finishing of this project, our paths were all lined up, and neither one of the three of us had any idea. This was all God's doing. So now, the reason I said don't forget Popeyes, We were in Popeyes, and unbeknownst to us, as we was leaving, the brother came in to order his food. So when the time it took us to walk over to the club, come back to get on the train, the brother has ordered his food and went downstairs and got in the train station before us. So now, he's sitting there eating. We both have on our shirts like that, so the big Y catches his attention. We didn't really say anything to each other, but he was kind of looking at us because of the shirts. So, long story short, skipping over all the details of that part of it, he ate his food, and because he was a clean brother, he walked to the trash receptacle to throw his box away. Had he not walked to that trash receptacle, he would have ended up in the train car ahead of us. So, he gets on the train car, he's in there with us, he's sitting across, he has his camera with us. Me being a videographer myself, I immediately strike up a conversation, how long you been videoing, you know, what kind of shows you do, etc. So now, we're going back and forth, we find out we have a few things in common. We both do shows through BCAT, on public access channel in Brooklyn. And, you know, the conversation just meanders through a whole lot of different things. And then we start calling off. I tell him about the project we're working on, which is the film you just saw. So when I said the title, he was like, wait a minute, that name sounds familiar. I know somebody that's working on the project, something like that. So then he starts calling off names, and one of the names actually rang a bell with him. So he goes through his phone, and he finds the brother's name, and he looks up and he goes, are you Sid? And he's like, yo, are you Jeter? These brothers never met. They only spoke on the phone. So I'm sitting there completely awestruck because I'm like, there's no way this is a coincidence. God put the three of us in that car for us to cross paths that particular night so that these brothers can meet face to face and continue doing what needs to be done for the project. I'm sitting there for the whole ride, pretty much all the way through Manhattan, practically into Brooklyn, just sitting there going, no way, no way. I'm just looking at the both of them like, no way. Because the man only spoke to him on the phone. He didn't know what he looked like, never met him. He didn't know what he looked like. They didn't even, all they knew was each other's names and that they were speaking about working on the editing of this project. Me, unbeknownst to this conversation even going on, I'm totally awestruck by the fact that God had his hand all over this, from the time me and him met, to the things that happened up to that point, to that very point. Because coincidence ain't that good. I don't care what nobody says. Coincidence and luck is not that good. And the fact that had the brother not thrown away his Popeyes box, he wouldn't have even saw us that night.
And let me add one point to that, real quick. The guy that he's actually talking about editing the project, I got his phone number from my man in Virginia. I live in Atlanta, so I had never even seen this guy before. I just flew from Atlanta, came all the way to New York, and before I left New York, that story happened, and there's numerous stories just on, and this is what God is wanting me to do. He's reaching out to me through hip-hop. So because we're letting these kids, what Hollywood said, they're being robbed of their childhood. They're not having childhoods, where they're going from birth to just being grown. And that's what's going on. And and it's just amazing some of the stuff that was said in the alignment. And that's what my purpose is to do with this film. So I'm going around to the different learning institutions, the Scratch Academies, anywhere, community centers, anywhere where there's young people, if they're going to school for broadcast media, we got to reach out and start teaching these kids. And we can't teach these kids all of this stuff that we see on TV. Yeah. Now this is what God is telling me. Don't pat me. I'm not looking for the fame or the glory. I'm just being used. So you can find this film, I'm gonna leave the information. I have a website, it's www.MUZIK, M-U-Z-I-K, Lovahaz, LUVAHAZ.com, MUZIKlovahaz.com. That's what, Google search it, you can Google search it also, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff on it. I'm gonna let Rodney, take it from here.
Well, how I got connected to this film was I get a phone call from him. I don't know how he gets my number, but he calls me. And he, as you can tell, is a spiritual man, right? And he has so many stories about how God has his hands on his project. I'm a firm believer in spirituality as well. And through our conversations, I kind of felt him, you know, but he's asking me to be a part of this project, and I really don't want to do it, right? I'm like, you know, because I got this call so many times from so many other people who basically just want to pimp hip-hop. And they want my story so that they can help them to pimp hip-hop. And I just wouldn't do it, you know? But it was just something about this brother that made me say, okay, I'll do it, right? I hadn't even met him, right? He had got Jazzy Moto to come and film me. The first footage that we did somehow got lost, right? And he was a little nervous because my footage is gone. He don't know how to tell me it's gone, but he needs me to do it again. And he says, you know, eventually he breaks it down and tells me, you know, but because of his spirituality, I said, you know what, I'll do it again. And we went on and we did it again. And, you know, this time he was able to keep track of the footage. And thank you for making me first in your documentary. So I think it was worth it.
Guys, let's give it up. Music artists. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Facebook, you can contact me, Eric Jazzymoto Williams, Jazzymoto1 at Twitter. I don't have an Instagram. Don't bother, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not getting caught up in that mess. But as far as what I'm doing now, health issues I've been going through, but before all of this started, I have a documentary of my own that I'm working on about my musical history from the beginning up to the present day. Been DJing now since '78. In the midst of me DJing, I accidentally became an MC. It literally happened by accident. I was at a jam with a DJ friend of mine who didn't have any MCs, and he threw on To Be Real. To Be Real is one of those breaks that somebody's gotta say something over that record. You know, that's not something you can just hear that bass line playing and I say something. So I stumbled into MCing by accident and ended up getting more of a reputation in Harlem for being an MC than a DJ at the time. But other than that, just supporting the film and getting into just music production. I have my own label, Extra Tough Entertainment. That's pretty much it at the present.